What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I am back with yet another album review, and today I am talking about the latest offering from Lunar, Tempora Mutantur. This also came out on January 31st, this time on Cybot Reigns, and this is the band's fourth studio full-length overall. This is my first time checking this band out. Never heard of them before until scouring through the archives to find stuff that I could talk about for the weekend of January 31st. And I saw this. I saw it was listed as progressive metal / rock. And, well, I do love prog, and I've been needing to check out some newer prog metal bands. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to give this a shot. And this is a Sacramento, California-based band that actually you could kind of consider a supergroup that features former members of the following bands: Atrophy, Ex Mortis, Warbringer, Witherfall, and Michael Diener's solo band, Diener's Inferno. So mostly a lot of thrash bands that the musicians are kind of coming out of, and they're coming together to create a prog metal / prog rock band. And this band has actually been around for about 10 years, maybe a little bit more, and this is their fourth album overall. So let's get into it. So we kick things off with A Summer to Forget. Right off the rip, you get into these like progressive grooves with the bass and the drums working together. There's even, I think, what sounds like French horns going off. And there's some like really cool, like twangy clean guitars, like twangy clean riffs. And then all of a sudden it goes from these like twangy prog rock riffs into straight up prog metal. Like the guitar riffs get heavier, they get chunky. And then the vocals. I gotta admit, the vocals, I believe the frontman's named Chandler, I'm fairly certain. But he's got a hell of a range. Like, he kind of reminds me of the frontman from HAKEN, but he also reminds me a lot of Tommy Giles Roger from Between the Buried and Me, because his clean delivery, it's well executed, doesn't sound forced or too processed or anything like that, but his growls and his screams definitely made me think of Tommy from BTBAM. Like, he's got an intense roar and a maniacal, like, black metal or hardcore scream, and that comes in a lot. Like, almost you could consider this progressive death metal, and in fact I would call this a progressive death metal album, but also prog metal and prog rock kind of blend together. But also with this opening track, you get a little bit of hints of some of the guys' thrash roots. Like, you get thrashy rhythms, but with like quirky riffs that kind of feel like a less dissonant Voivod, if that was even possible. And then I gotta say, the lead work on this album, holy shit, these guitarists are not messing around when it comes down to the solos. Like, you get, like, especially here on the opening track here, Summer to Forget, you get like your big, like, almost Slayer dive bomb, and then it leads perfectly into like back-to-back shredding leads. Like, there's so much going on with these guitar solos that I think it would make any guitar player either get wet or get hard. Whichever. If you're a woman, you're gonna get wow, I almost messed that up. If you're a woman, you'll get wet. If you're a dude, you'll get hard. Maybe a little wet from some pre-cum in your jeans. I don't know. But point is, these leads can make any guitar player blush because it's just all over the map with great shred, also technical execution, but great melody too. Like, awesome melody with these solos. Hell, even the keyboards show some signs of taking over the lead, like here as well as a couple of tracks later on. But then we get into Fall Back Into Old Habits, which is the longest track of the album at over 11 minutes. And it's intense. Like, for a prog metal song, this is probably one of the most intense prog songs I've heard in a little bit. Like, there's thrash and death metal moments, awesome, like, death metal chugs and groove, blast beats with even atonal riffs and great keyboards kind of layered perfectly. And my God, this song has, I think I counted 5 leads. 5 leads. So yeah, these guitarists are just going for it. But you do get a lot of like cool like off-time prog grooves, but also like thrashy double time, even some guitar harmonies, which I will admit I do wish there could have been more guitar harmonies, because this one moment here on this track was like, oh my god, I want more. I want it up the ass. Wait, no, I want it in my ears. But and there's even some like triplet gallops with a tremolo riff and a blast on top. And then even towards the end, a funky bass and clean guitar part before it just ends in this like giant, epic, majestic, yet intense way. And then we get into Seasonal Interlude, which was under 5 minutes, and I was thinking, it's an interlude, it'll probably be filler. No, for an interlude, this is probably one of the best interludes I've ever heard. It's just going for like all the progressive tropes, like great keyboards, clean guitars, acoustic guitars, violin, and even some of the most soulful vocals and vocal rounds you get on the album. And then you get into a moment where the bass kind of builds up the mood. Suddenly you get these like big evil riffs and awesome drums, huge growls, even a saxophone solo, which is like, doesn't get more prog than that. And then into Weakling Winter Touch, starts off with a clean melody and some like pretty ambience. And then it's, for the most part, rather doomy. Like, this is almost like a prog doom song, because the riffs and the beats, for the most part, stay within like the doom realm. But you also get like, I think it's a choir, I'm not sure. But again, there's a moment where the vocals get more soulful again, but with the bass kind of adding to those vocals. And then a keyboard solo that leads directly into the guitar solo, and then again ends rather epically. Spring in My Step, this one kind of goes for a combination of like 80s prog, classic metal, and a little bit of death metal. Like, you get a classic metal riff to start it off, and then it turns rather quirky, and the synths that are added on top give it that 80s vibe. And this song definitely reminded me a lot of HAKEN. Like, there's a good chunk of this album that made me think of HAKEN a little bit. And actually, another important influence I forgot to mention is OPETH. There's a couple of moments of some OPETH, like there's a clean section in Fall Back into Old Habits where it feels very Opeth-esque, and then it leads into some blues stuff. But back to Spring in My Step, you do get some like awesome death metal chugs, even a breakdown, but you get a solo on top of like riffs and rhythms that almost made me think of early 80s Rush, like Spirit of Radio, kind of, the Spirit of the Radio. But then we get into the final 3 tracks, which are collectively the title track, but in parts. Part 1, The Passage of Time, probably one of the prettiest songs on the album. Like, it's mostly piano driven, but with tuneful vocals and like harmonies with the vocals. There's harmonica, which is really cool. And then it leads into a wonderful guitar solo that honestly kind of reminded me of Sinister Gates' solo on the song Exist from The Stage, like in the middle where it's like building to the final or second half of the song. And then part 2, Broken Pendulum, this is probably up there with Fall Back into Old Habits for the most intense song of the album. Cool keyboards before it leads perfectly into the guitars, drum and bass groove, and it lumbers pretty well, but it gets flat out technical, like almost like towards the technical side of prog. But it definitely has a lot of Between the Buried and Me moments, and the drums are just going everywhere, and it's intense and epic again. And then it leads perfectly into part 3, Watch the Weather Change, bassline into another classic metal riff, and for the most part kind of sticks within like a classic metal kind of feel, but with the groove of HAKEN. Epic ambience in the background, the chorus hooks are big. There's awesome like trade-offs between the keyboards and the guitars for the lead section. There's some blast beats again, and more Opeth moments as far as some of the riffs that come in towards the end, and the album ends in a rather awesome way. No other words to describe it. I forgot to mention production-wise, this was pretty well balanced. Like, everything was evenly kiltered, the bass is prominent, and it was mastered by Tony Lindgren from Fascination Street Studios, the right-hand man to the legendary Jens Bogren. But overall, the only thing I could maybe complain about would be I perhaps could have cut out a couple of the solos and fall back into old habits. It's an amazing song, but there might have been a case of there being too much guitar. Maybe that will be the only complaint, and it's the most minor of grievances. Man, you want to talk about close to a 5. This album is just rubbing on a 5-star. I'm going to give this 4.5. This might be my favorite album to come out in January. Even though this video is posted in early February, it came out January 31st. But holy crap, for a prog metal album, this is mostly intense, but also very beautiful at the same time. Very much, again, I would say the key bands, if you're into old OPETH, specifically between the Buried in Me and HAKEN, definitely check this out. This is some awesome progressive metal, progressive death metal, progressive rock. But of course, those are just my opinions. What did you guys think? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. All that fun stuff. But until next time, thank you for watching. Keep your horns high and your dreams wet.